Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Brandon here with the Mean Street Podcast, and we're coming to you from the One Fall Power Factory here in Norcross, Georgia, and I'm being joined by a very special guest. Wrestling fans, you might remember him as the legendary Glacier from WCW. It's Ray Lloyd, man. How you doing?
Brandon, thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. I'm going to give the fans, the listeners here, a little flashback to how you and I met, which was just a few weeks ago, back in January.
Yeah.
You guys were filming a movie.
Yep.
And you were doing some wrestling scenes here at One Fall Power Factory.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to get to be an extra.
Yeah.
Got to play the commentary team.
Did a heck of a job. You guys gave us even more production value for what we had for those scenes. And, and it worked out great for everybody. So we appreciate you guys giving up your Saturday to come out and do that.
Absolutely, man. It was a blast, especially being a wrestling fan going back to the 90s, you know, and knowing you guys, and the Cat was here.
Yeah.
Ming was here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awesome. And so, speaking of the movie, let's kind of just get into that right off the bat here.
Yeah.
Kind of take us back a little bit to where the idea came from, where the script came from, whose idea was it, and what you guys have been up to for the last several months.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been a long road, but well worth it.
Yeah.
One of my best buddies in or out of the wrestling business is got him Luther Wilson, who went to the power plant. That's where we met back in '96. He wrestled as Luther Biggs. So if anybody remembers when I did the Coach Buzz Stern angle for a little while, he was Luther Biggs that was with me. But we've been great friends forever. And actually, this is an idea he came up with at least 10 years ago, maybe longer. And the original idea kind of morphed into a little bit more of something that was the idea that we finally settled on was something that was, we were big fans of like those movies with ensemble cast, like the Dirty Dozen, the Wild Bunch, the Magnificent Seven's, the one that most people know when you say it. And of course, he just did a remake of the Magnificent Seven just a couple of years ago with Denzel and Chris Pratt and all that.
Right.
And one of our actors in our film actually played Mark Ashworth played the role of Preacher in the remake.
Okay. Yeah,
great role in that film. He's got a great role in our film. But about 5-6 years ago, we got really serious about, okay, if we're going to do this, we better get started because we ain't getting any younger.
Right.
So we had a good friend of ours to basically do the original draft of the script, and that was something that was a huge thing for us. It was a huge first step because until then it was just an idea, with some notes. And so we had a working script, and at that point, of course, as scripts do, the script evolved into the point of where we finally felt like we had the working script, and then we were. We went through the process of setting the budget and getting funded and all that, which is probably, to tell all that stuff would be a story for a whole nother time just to get through all that. But
part two.
Yeah, the long and short of it is that we were finally able to put together a great story and do something that has never been done as far as I know, which is put together a film that featured an ensemble cast of professional wrestlers.
Yeah.
And so when people, and this was an action-adventure film with a little bit of a sci-fi twist, so when people would ask me, like, okay, what's the movie about, what's it like, the best description I could come up with, it's like the Magnificent Seven meets They Live.
Wow.
And when I say They Live, because one of it, we wanted to, if we were going to do a little sci-fi element, we wanted to do something that would maybe be a little tip of the hat to Roddy Piper and John Carpenter from that 80s action film.
Sure.
And then, mold those two together. And the reason we settled on, adding the sci-fi element is because, these guys are going to battle somebody.
Yeah.
So we just figured, okay, if they're going to have to battle somebody, why not? It's a lot of fun if you're battling aliens. So,
of course.
And plus we know for a fact that there's a huge crossover audience for sci-fi fans. Typically, a lot of those are wrestling fans and vice versa.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of got started. And then the next part of it was to try to fill all the roles with the people who I felt were the best fits, and then you got to see some of those here a few weeks ago when we were filming. But this film is something that as I told you guys when we were here filming this, my goal, this has been my heart and soul for the last few years. I very quietly pursued this because, in the wrestling industry, I've learned, after over 30 years of being in this business, you don't want to go out and proclaim anything in wrestling. You'd rather quietly get all your ducks in a row, and then once you know you got it, then you present it to the world. But just all the thing that I was most impressed with is the fact that the people we were able to bring together in this film is going to really, really just blow people away that who all's in this film.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, and like I said, being a wrestling fan, just being here and being allowed to be an extra, like that was just super cool for me.
It was a good day, yeah.
But to see somebody like Ming,
yeah.
I mean, King Haku
yeah.
in person, just right there in front of us. And, of course, the Cat, I've been a big Cat fan for years and years,
yeah.
and you as well. Like, you guys were so gracious to us, by the way, and it was such a blast. So we had a lot of fun doing that. But, I mean, you talked about – how long has it been? 30-plus years?
33 years now. April will be 33 years. I broke in April of 87. So,
April of 87.
And I've been very, very active all those 33 years. I mean, it's a lot of guys will say, I was telling the younger guys last night, we have a group that's training with us that just started. And that some people will say, oh, I've been wrestling for 25 years, and they wrestled for 3 or 4, took 20 years off, and they came back.
Oh, yeah.
This has been my life. I've done a lot of other stuff, but wrestling has always been in my life very much full force. Whole 30-plus years.
So I probably started watching, and the guys that listen to the show know this, but probably mid to late 90s about when I started getting into watching WCW. And, some people were either WWF guys or WCW guys. At first, I was a WCW guy.
Yeah.
And it was right around the time Goldberg came in, and it would have been 97-ish, somewhere in there. And so you were already Glacier.
Yeah.
So I never saw Glacier debut or anything. Like you were just already there.
Yeah.
So how did that character, and you've probably told this story a million times, but I'm curious because I don't know it, and the fans listening might not know it. Where did the character come from? Is that something you came up with, or a creative gave you?
Well, to preface that, to lead into that, is I'll share something that I share with our beginning guys that are training here right now.
Yeah.
Last night is that this business is the most unpredictable business in the world. It's the most unfair business. If you're expecting to get a fair shake in the wrestling business, it can easily break your heart real quick. But that's not to say it's not a great business. It is. And I think in any business where it's subjective, like opinions of who's really better and stuff like that, you have that as far as music, theater, whatever, I broke in April of 87, and my first meeting that happened that would put me on the path to becoming Glacier was in January of 96. So it was almost 10 years, that I put time in. And I wrestled in the States. I wrestled in Japan. But, I was a good 9 years in before I got that break. And, it's like I tell people all the time, it's like, if you're doing this and you got some certain time clock set, like, oh, I'm going to give it 3 or 4 years, and then if it doesn't happen, I'm out.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time because, it may take, I tell people all the time,
10 years.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't take you as long as it took me, but it may take you even longer.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to put that time in and go down that journey. It really is about the journey. It's not the destination. And I said last night, like, even if you go 10 years and all of a sudden you say, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to go a different path. If you did it for the right reasons, hopefully the people you met along the way were people that gave you great experiences. So you could say, at least I had a great experience when I was pursuing that,
For sure,
and but yeah, so and the other thing I told our trainees last night is I'm really big on my philosophy of life and training and careers or whatever. I was a teacher and a coach for a long time when I was still pursuing wrestling, because those careers matched up pretty well. I could teach when wrestling wasn't going on, and I could wrestle when teaching wasn't going on, and having great teachers and coaches and mentors, I'm really big on quotes. Quotes help me remember a lot of my philosophies. And one of my college coaches gave me my number one favorite quote is, and everybody's heard, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Yeah.
Well, my college coach said, well, I have what I think is another part of that quote that makes it even more true. And I was like, what's that? And he said, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you.
It's so funny because I knew you were going to say that, because I've heard DDP say it.
Yeah, I guess Ray Page got it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And,
I like it.
And the thing is, though, when you think about it, it's really true. It's like I can go say I know whoever, but that person is a person of influence, and I'm needing that person to maybe to speak up for me. If they don't, okay, doesn't care one bit what I say I know them or not. But and I mentioned that because to to lead into how I got into WCW was I moved here in 1990, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm smart enough when I moved here. I got a teaching job in Marietta, Georgia.
Okay.
Then not long after I moved here, Sting and Lex's Gym opened up in Marietta, which is the Main Event Fitness, and so I joined that, and I was in the Georgia circuit, indie circuit was pretty hot then.
Yeah.
So I was working on that a lot, and I got to know Disco and a lot of the other guys who were kind of on the rise. We all kind of were, we kind of started to kind of flock and hang out together. And I can't remember if it was actually Disco, but one of our group I ended up meeting Paige. I'm becoming friends with Paige and everything. And then, so I knew Paige, for a good 5 years or so. And he saw my work ethic. He saw everything. But still, I mean, Paige is a guy that, everybody knows his story, knows, his standards as far as if he's going to go to bat for you, you're going to have to earn that,
Yeah.
And so finally, he knew that Bischoff had mentioned to him that they were, looking to start this, capitalize on that Mortal Kombat thing, whatever.
Yeah.
So he scheduled a meeting for me with Eric once he found out that I had a martial arts background, and so it was right after that was during the holidays of '95, and he said, "Well, let's get through the holidays. I'll meet with him in January." And we went. I met him for dinner, and people hear the stories about Bischoff and Paige live, neighbors. They really were. They were really about 3 houses away from each other. And there was I think it was like a Longhorn Steakhouse in their neighborhood right outside the subdivision. I met, Eric there, and we sat down, and it was almost a 3-hour conversation. And I had no idea that basically what it was it was an interview. I didn't know it going in really.
Right.
And we talked. We had a lot of in common as far as martial arts and all that. And and so when it got ready for the conversation to end, he said to me, "Hey, I want to sign you to a deal." And
had he mentioned the character yet at that point, or
he'd started talking just a little bit about it.
Okay,
just a little bit about
it.
But I think that he didn't even really know. A lot of kind of where we were going to go with it then.
Yeah.
And so I knew that all I knew is that the first step was to find 4 people, 2 guys that would be the good guys and 2 would be the bad guys, and I knew he was already thinking of Ernest being the other one because Ernest was coaching his kids in martial arts, and Ernest was
3-time world karate champion.
Yeah, and he just looks like he looks like he should be a movie star or something. I mean, you look at him, But we're here at the our One Fall Power Factory is inside of the Chip Smith Performance Systems, which is here in Norcross, Georgia, 43,000 square foot world class facility. I met Chip when I was a teenager, and he's another big brother. He and our family, and people throw family around a lot. I mean, Chip is someone who we really are, I mean, he's the closest I have to a big brother on this planet, and been a huge influence in my life all these years. But because of, Chip, we're here, to be able to take advantage of all this. And but I was working with Chip at what's really, very famous country club called the Atlanta Athletic Club, where original Bobby Jones, who's considered the most famous golfer of all time, that was his home course. I mean, it was a 100-year-old club. I was fitness director there under Chip, who was athletic director. So I had a really good job. I'd left teaching just the year before, but I was still wrestling a lot. So even though this was my dream kind of being offered to me, I still, I didn't want to. I was kind of reluctant, like, well, what does that mean? You say you're going to sign me to a contract. So at that night, I was like, okay, well, what he said was, Eric said, you don't even have to quit your job right now. And I was like, what? And he goes, are you wrestling on the independent wrestling scene? And I said, yes, I am. He said, I want you to totally disappear from the indie scene, just disappear over the next few months.
Okay.
If you, cancel your bookings and just disappear, just lay low. And so, I went up to Chip. I told Chip about it, and I said, "Okay, I can still keep working." And then the way that the special effects company AFX came into play was I knew Andre Freitas, the guy that was the head of that, and I made an introduction to him and Eric, and they hired him on board to start creating everything that would become. And so and then Canyon was brought on board, and then Brian Clark. And Brian and I, known each other because we worked a lot on Georgia indie wrestling, they became Wrath and Mortis, and then eventually later Jim Mitchell would be brought on to as James Vandenberg, and once again
that's the name we were trying to. Me and a buddy at work today was like, what was James Mitchell's name back then? I couldn't remember.
James Vandenberg.
There it was.
I still call him Vandy to this day. That's my nickname for it. But yeah, so that's what I tell. But the one thing I can tell you, Brandon, is that out of that meeting, I went in not knowing what I was stepping into. I just knew I was going to meet Eric. At that point, I didn't know it would be a 5-minute conversation or a 3-hour one that turned into. But the thing is that if you are doing this business or anything else, especially pro wrestling, it's what I coached. It's what I tell. I do a lot of seminars now. I tell people all the time is you have to be ready when the opportunity comes.
Yeah.
If it's going to happen, you got to be ready. You have to do everything in your power to be ready. What will happen will happen. But if you're not ready, then the person who can change your life, they're going to know you're not ready. But if they're coming, they're looking, and they know that you are ready, then that's when the stars aligned. You know, and I was ready. I knew I was ready. I after about year 4 or 5, I felt like I knew I could compete at that top level, but I had to be patient. In this business, you do all you can do, and then you hope the stars align. You hope that meeting happens or somebody goes to bat for someone, is willing to say they know you. And Dallas was that guy who did that for me. And I thank him. He's still one of my best buddies in the whole world. But I bet there's 2 or 3 times a year where I still get emotional around. It just pops up because I can just be sitting around him and it just hits me. I'm just like, if he wouldn't have been able to do that for me, to schedule that meeting, God knows where my life would have went, And but I can say this, that I remember I was walking out of Main Event Fitness about a month before that meeting happened, and this is before Dallas had even scheduled it. And I remember thinking, I'm coming up. I'm going to be, 10 years is right around the corner. I've been doing this forever. And you know what? Maybe it's not going to happen. I remember saying that to myself. I was getting my stuff together, leaving the gym. I remember like it was 5 minutes ago having this conversation in my head. I remember walking to my car thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe I don't go any further than this, And then, but also I remember thinking, well, you know what though? I've gotten a chance to meet some of my heroes. I've become friends with some of my heroes. I've traveled a good bit of the world. I've done some really cool stuff. If this is it, okay, that's it. You know, I mean, and I was okay with it. I wasn't satisfied, but I was like, you know what? It's been a really cool ride, no matter what. And that's what I really try to convey to anyone who pursues this is. Really enjoy it for what it's worth, moment to moment, and don't get blinded by just your ambition of, I want to get to the top. Okay, yeah, but there's a lot that comes with that if you do get that break. So, but yeah, that was. I mean, it was. That started it all, and then that was and we could probably do a whole different show about just that whole process. Because we used to have. Because Eric was really big at that point. How bad is it to say this? That the internet was just getting going then. We kind of in infancy, so we were able to keep it a lot more quieter than you probably would be today. But we would have what Eric would call the midnight meetings, where we'd meet at the studio and we'd start. We'd catch him up on all our what we'd done the last 2 weeks, and he would say, "I like that. Let's don't do that." Blah 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 blah. And then he'd be off again, and then we'd work for a couple more weeks. So it was, and then of course we were starting to get down to the power plant. And I tell the young guys who were here last night is, whatever stories you've heard about the power plant, it was at least that rough.
It's true, and then some.
But it was a great place to be. I really, really, you couldn't get away with what they got away with at the power plant back then. But it was a great place to go and work and sweat, and the camaraderie there is something that I absolutely loved that environment. I really did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, you talked about how you almost were at the point where you were saying you were going to be done.
Yeah.
And I got to say, as a fan, and I'm sure as many other fans would agree, I'm glad you didn't.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad you kept going, man.
Me too. It's a
big fan over the years, and so you're a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah,
now, I am curious, though. You talked about Glacier came about in '96, and about at the time you were came into WCW.
Yeah.
Before that, were you just wrestling as Ray Lloyd?
I was. The funny thing is I was finishing up football in fall of '86, and I got to know one of my best buddies I played college football with was a guy named R.D. Swain. Okay, that sounds like a football name, but I played center, he played guard, and he's one of my best buddies. And we'd gotten to know. They did a little wrestling show in Valdosta State College, where we were in Valdosta, Georgia. Yeah. Did a little Saturday morning show at the TV station there. We'd go and watch that and act like idiots, with a bunch of our buddies. And we got to know Fred Avery, who was a wrestler, and And as we finished our last season, we were kind of coming into, I was getting ready to graduate, and Artie was 1 year younger than me, but and he was like, hey, I think you guys can do this, and that was, even though it wasn't that long ago, and as far as the big picture, even that 30 years ago, you didn't have wrestling schools like you have now. I mean, you really had to kind of be invited in, and the guy that broke him in was a real old school guy. Fred had purchased a ring, and he had it in his backyard. And I think it's still the hardest ring I've ever been in to this day. But, back then, right. But I always say that, RD was one who was just a natural at it. He was like a Tommy Rich type. He just had that fire. But when it took some prodding to get me to kind of commit, because you got to remember at that point, I'm watching wrestling. I mean, everybody in wrestling were tough guys, man. Yeah. I mean, I looked at like Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, Flair, Terry Funk, people like that. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm as tough as those guys, and you heard the stories about, people asking about wrestling, and if they, tried to poke fun at wrestling, they get their, they fight them, and so, I was kind of reluctant to dive in, and I thank Fred so much. Even to this day, we're still great friends. And he's a wrestling coach at down in Fernandina High School down in right outside Jacksonville now. Mm-hmm. But he was like, "No, you guys, I know you guys can do this. Actually, I think you guys, we should break you in as a tag team." So we started training, and we actually trained and started off as a tag team called the Blazers, which is what our mascot was for Valdosta State. And so, But yeah, I mean, it was. I thank him so much for believing in me, because if he wouldn't have really kind of grabbed me by the hand and said, "Come on, I think you can do this," once again, I don't know if I'd ever even would have broke into wrestling. So, I'm very thankful and very humbled by the fact, and I let him know every time I can how much I appreciate the people who really brought me along.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And that's what I feel. It's a moral obligation to me to when I see that in people, to try to do that.
Kind of pass that forward.
Yeah, and keep them going and guide them, a little bit. So that's why, with the school we have here with, with QT here, and QT and I are very like-minded in that sense. And so, we, even though our personalities are totally different, we do gel very well together. And I give QT all the credit in the world. He's here day to day, along with some of our senior trainees who are now kind of helping coach, because I've been doing this, which has allowed me to go do this film for the last, especially this last whole year of 2019. That was literally all I was doing. So QT, I give him all the credit in the world. I mean, anyone that's come through this program is because he has put in the work. They put in the work with him, to come out of here and be something. So.
Gotcha. Well, you kind of beat me to the punch there. I was getting ready to ask you about the connection with QT Marshall and how you guys actually started the One Fall Power Factory. So go into a little bit about how old is the school, first of all?
Now we're going into the third year.
Okay.
We've been here, like I said, a part of Chip's facility here for a little over 2 years now. I think this was November 2 years ago is when we came here. QT, he and I had known each other. We met around 2007 or so, maybe, down in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I was impressed with him for the first time I ever met him, because I was putting together an indie show, and I was kind of booking the talent, and someone had told me about him. And the first time I saw him, what impressed me so much about him was he already looked the part. His gear looked professional. He carried himself. He spoke professional. I mean, all those things that you would, if you're going to train someone to put them out there, that's what you want them to know. How to carry themselves, how to talk, how to look the part.
Yeah.
And as soon as because I hate to say it, but even today, that's pretty rare. I mean, and because you are your own business, and you're all your own brand, and he stood out, and so, and then some time went by, we kind of went our separate ways, and then we kind of got reconnected. And actually, he reached out to me when he was looking to bring the school to Atlanta, because he moved here because with his relatives being here, and his wife made the move here. And
so he already had a school down there?
No, he came from he was at the Monster Factory, and then he went to, when he was in Kissimmee, he was training with the Dudleys there. But he was, I think, beginning to start doing some of the coaching when they were on the road, which obviously was a lot.
Gotcha.
And so when he came here, he was wanting to originally do another Monster Factory here, and because he had been a part of the one out there, and the more and more I think he looked at it, I think it was more of he really had his own vision of, I want to really create my own brand.
Yeah.
And even though the Monster Factory is a great brand, obviously, I think he wanted to just say, I want to start something from scratch. And I don't think he really wanted to answer to anybody, so to speak. He kind of wanted to say, look, I'm going to take this the way I want to go. And I came in as, even though we're partners, so to speak, at the time I was in Orlando, and I didn't know if or when I'd be moving back to Atlanta. And so I wanted to kind of be there as more of a supportive partner to say, hey, how can I help you, build your dream, build your vision of this thing. And so we were at a facility up in, he found one up in a little bit further north Georgia, which was a great facility, but it wasn't that big. It was what most wrestling schools are. It was a ring kind of in a warehouse type setup, Right. And even though it was good, there was not a lot of room to do a lot of stuff. And we were sharing it with like an amateur wrestling club and stuff like that. And then I think Mike just came to me one time, and because when he saw this facility, and he was like, they have that one kind of area over there they don't seem to use that much. You think Chip might be interested in having us come in and partner up, and so
you already had the connection with Chip.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, Chip and I are just as tight as you could be, and so one thing led to another. We had a meeting with Chip, and eventually we worked it out to where we were able to come in here under the whole umbrella of Chip Smith Performance Systems, and it's been great because it allows. There's a part of the building that we use that doesn't really interfere with anybody else.
Right.
We now have 4 rings here.
I saw it in there, man. What a great setup!
It really is. I call it Disney World for athletes when you come in this place, because
awesome.
it's not just that that Chip is world famous sports performance coach. I mean, he's put in almost over 1,800 NFL athletes, into the NFL. He in 2012, him and his two sons for a good year or so went back and forth every other month, coached the Chinese Olympic team, and I think it was 21 of the 33 medalists that Chip trained and coached. So I mean, his resume is second to none. And right now, one of the things he's most famous for is NFL combine training for some of the top college players that are getting ready to go into the combines. Which is we're in mid-February, the combines are in a couple of weeks. At the end of February, and he gets the best of the best. Jalen Hurts is training here right now, and who is obviously one of the best in this 2019 class, and it will be one of the first picked for the draft. But our trainees get a chance to just be in the atmosphere of world-class athletes, and that's iron sharpens iron, and just to be around that kind of that environment, and so but once again, I give so much credit to Mike, to QT, because he's a great friend, and I say this with the utmost humility. I've been around a lot of people who have great work ethics and work really hard and put the work in, Dallas being one of them. Mm-hmm. Dallas is kind of the measuring stick, Mike's pretty darn close. I mean, Mike is completely dedicated to this. I mean, his wife, Carolyn, is a trainer and a nutritionist. She comes in and oversees all the weight training that when we have. Mm-hmm. I can say this, I mean, you can imagine, I mean, NFL players training here. Our weight training facility is it's
top notch.
The best you're going to find anywhere. So, Carolyn puts them through that for an hour or so. They take about a half-hour break, and then we go to the ring to train. So, even when the trainees that come here to train, when they go through this program, they are getting the best possible training from A to Z, not just in-ring training, as far as what to eat right, how to actually not only do they lift, they're trained and taught how to lift correctly. So if they decide to break away and go back to their hometown or whatever to continue doing what they're doing, they'll at least have been trained properly in every aspect. So I'm really, really proud and excited. Now that the movie, as far as shooting the film is in the can, the post-production where I can kind of, it's like my guarded baby, but it's kind of handed off to the post-production people, let them do that. Frees up a lot more time for me to be here. So I'm here this week and pretty much all through next week, and just doing my part to help out so QT can be on the road doing what, as of right now, they're getting ready to go on the air in about 15 minutes on Wednesday night area. Yeah. But and I'm super, super stoked for him for the opportunities that he's gotten with AEW as a producer and a talent, in the ring too. So.
Well, I was getting ready to say, you talked about all the high caliber athletes that have come through the performance systems here. On the AEW side, I mean, if you go back and look at some of the Road 2 series, I believe there's footage of Cody here, there's footage of Brandy here, several of the athletes, QT himself actually here, training in the rings and stuff. So if you go back and you watch those episodes and you are wondering where they're training, it's actually right here at the One Fall Power Factory. Here. So now bringing up the AEW connection here. Obviously, we know QT is a big part behind the scenes there, and he's been in the ring a number of times too as of late. But I mean, what a cool time to be a wrestling fan, because
absolutely,
everybody's been chomping at the bit for another option, to be able to change the channel, and not take anything away from what they're doing up north, but it's just it was about time that we wanted to see something new. And so I believe before AEW actually existed officially, was it All In where you were Cody kind of went to the ring he had the NWA World's Championship match against Nick Aldis. And you were part of the Nightmare family that came out with it was you and DDP and
Tommy Dreamer.
Dreamer was there, that's right. And I think Brandy's dad maybe.
Dad and Mr. Otis and Kevin, his brother-in-law.
So how did that come about? Like, I mean, I know, I guess, can you explain a little bit about the family connection there with you and the Rhodes family?
And when they filmed the training videos for Cody training up to the match, they shot here. So, most people that have followed my career know that after WCW, I was so fortunate. I mean, when I grew up in South Georgia. Yeah. So my dad would take me and my brother, the twin brother, to watch wrestling at the Jacksonville Coliseum, which was right on across the Georgia-Florida line, about an hour away from where we lived. So, and that was when Florida Championship Wrestling was. I didn't know there was anything else.
Right. I mean, that was it.
Yeah, that was it. And then Georgia Championship Wrestling. So, even back in the 3-channel days, I still got to see both of them. And of course, Dusty was. I was a huge. I mean, Dusty Rhodes and Evel Knievel were my two childhood heroes. And so, and to me, they were like superheroes. And so when I got to WCW, I was scared to death of Dusty. It was like they always say you never meet your heroes. And I didn't really get to know Dusty that well in WCW because I was just really intimidated by him, and like so many people, I was in awe of him, but I was still kind of intimidated. And then once we did the Buzz Stern thing, when I got, we put the Glacier thing on the shelf for a while, he was the producer. He produced all those vignettes for us. Okay. So then I really got to start to get to know him, and he got to know me, which was equally important. I didn't realize how much at that time, but not long after that is when Dusty left, not long after the whole thing, because there was a big shift with the powers that be and all that. So that was in 2000. So Dusty immediately left and started his own company called Turnbuckle Entertainment, and he started a wrestling company called Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. And once again, I credit Dallas Page, because I'm driving up, and I get one of those old cell phones, the bigger ones, in 2000. Right. And I'm pulling in my driveway, and my phone rings. It's a number that I didn't recognize. And normally I wouldn't answer. I don't know what made me answer this one, but I answered it, and it was Dusty, And
did you believe it, or did you think somebody was like ribbing you?
I was like, this guy Dallas put somebody up there.
Because I've heard Dallas do the voice.
Yeah. So, it was pretty good, and I'll never forget him. He literally said, and the way that I knew that I had a good idea that it was Dusty is because when I first got to know Dusty when he was producing those vignettes, he from day one he always called me Raymond, Okay. And so when he called me, he said, Raymond is American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And he said, start my own company, and I want to talk to you. Can we have a meeting? Blah blah blah. And I was like, a meeting? What kind of meeting? And so I ended up going to meet with him, and he basically said, that he was looking for someone to bring on as his right-hand man to help really kind of oversee, run the talent, in the locker rooms, help with his wrestling school and all that. And at this point, he didn't even have a building yet or anything, but I could very much see his vision that he saw, And so, obviously, to kind of cut to the chase, I said yes, but I told him, I was like, I'm still with WCW. I don't know. Right. And so he was like, let me handle that. And so once the time came, he just went right to Eric and said, like, hey, I want Raymond helping me, blah, blah, blah. And Eric had a great answer. He just said, because I can't remember if this is right before he left or maybe Eric could come back. It's during one of those times where he just said, look, it's whatever he does on this time is his business. As long as it doesn't interfere with his job here. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And so, it was, it was just, that's how it started. But, I found out later Dallas is the one that recommended me again, because, he was like, he went to Dallas, said, who do you think would, and he said, well, to get to talk to Ray, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but through that, you know, I became very, very close to Dusty, and which was a dream come true. But the thing that I remember thinking so much about as I was getting to know Dusty and I was getting to know the family, what a lot of people don't know is that, you know, they do know that Cody was a great high school wrestler. He lasted high school.
A Georgia champion, right?
2-time state champion.
2 times.
So. His wrestling coach, Steve Day, is once again, you know, one of my very, very best friends. You know, and so Steve and I were hanging out a lot then. Obviously, Steve, what a lot of people don't know, he's in the Amateur Wrestling Hall of Fame. I mean, as far as wrestling goes, yeah, he's a guy that, and he's a heavyweight. I mean, he's my size. He's not as he's slimmer than I am right now, but you know, so I got to know Cody when he was really young, and watch Cody grow up and become really close to the family, and you know, with Dusty's wife, Cody's mom, Michelle, and Teal, and all them, and so. You know, and they were all involved with Turnbuckle, so it was kind of like, obviously kind of family
Big
business.
Family, yeah.
And you know, thank God that I was there to, you know, that Dustin and Dusty had you know reconnected. You know, there's a period where they were you know kind of at odds a little bit, and they reconnected. I got to see the beauty of that, which is amazing. And then Dustin was starting to work with us. So it was that 2000 around 04, almost 4 years, you know, that was the transition where I really got to know Dusty really well. During that period of time, I got married. Dusty was a groomsman at my wedding, which was just an amazing.
That's so crazy to think,
you know. And and I always say, you know, with all due respect to my ex-wife, I say, you know, that my marriage didn't last, but my friendship with Dusty did. You know? You know, but through all that, you know, I think Cody got to see him, which I didn't really know until he came to sit down and talk with us about that, going in all in. That, that I became, you know, it's like Dusty. I mean, like Dallas, and I mean, you know, Dusty had a very, very, you know, very small circle of friends, and
I've heard Cody say that, like, it was kind of almost like no pun intended with the inner circle, but you guys were kind of like Dusty's inner circle.
And I, you know, I never knew that he, you know, shared that with anybody else. I just felt like, you know, that I was very fortunate to be in there. And you know, and the latter years when Dusty went to work for WWE and all that, well, obviously we stayed in touch, but it wasn't as much as, because I didn't want to bug him. I mean, I knew how crazy busy he was, but whenever I did contact him, you know, it was like we never, you know, missed a beat. You know, we'd catch up and stuff, but when it came time for All In, I remember Cody had a little cookout over at his house, and he had me and Dallas were sitting outside, and he said, you know, I'm very big on, I want to blaze my own path, you know, I want to make my own path, and he said, but you know, he said, you know, everybody wants to make the comparisons, you know, and he said, but for the most part, I can handle that, and I can just, you know, tell my story. He said, but there's really no getting around this one. You know? I mean, it's the NWA title, you know, and all that stuff. And so, you know, he'd come up with this idea that he wanted to have, you know, his circle of influence around people that he felt, you know, and obviously if his dad would have been here, that would have been his dad would have been leading that charge, you know. And so he asked me and Dallas. He said, you know, I'd like for you guys to be there with me. And man, I can't even tell you how. I mean, words don't even describe how humbling it was, and how just. For me, it will always be one of my favorite moments connected to the wrestling business, that he thought enough of us to include us in something that was going to be that special to him and his family. I mean, just, you know, I have that jacket hanging up in my closet, and I have it hanging up in a space where I see it every day. Yeah. And it's just, every time I go to my closet, it's just, I can't tell you how many times I look at that, and it's just a reminder of how truly fortunate I feel to have been that he thought enough of us to ask us to be a part of that.
And really I'm sure, I know that was special for you guys, but from a fan's perspective, it was super cool to see. I mean, and knowing, and you know, I'm glad you kind of elaborated and told us a little more about the backstory, but knowing that you were part of that tight-knit inner circle. And so as a fan, you knew that, and you knew the connection to Dusty and how special it would have been, you know, obviously if he could have been there for it. I mean, what a neat moment, and the fact that he won the NWA World's title that night, you know, and you guys were there.
The funny part about it is that wasn't planned was all that we were supposed to do was walk him to the ring, and then we were all, you know, Nick's guys, which is kind of cool because, you know, Jeff and I, you know, did some tag teaming together for a brief period of time back when I first started.
Wow,
and,
see, I didn't know that.
And so, you know, and I've been friends with Jeff all those years, so I got to see Jeff. I hadn't seen him in a long time, but they did the thing where we were all out, and then they slowly followed us back to the back. So I got in the back of me and Dreamer standing there with Dallas watching the monitors, and I'd already taken my jacket off, and I was just kind of had it thrown over my shoulder, and then boom, he wins, and everybody's celebrating. I'll never forget. Dreamer goes, he's looking, he goes, we should be out there. And Dallas goes, you know what, we should. So we just took off. We weren't even supposed to go back out there.
Okay.
And I'll never forget. I'm going out and I'm trying to put my jacket back on, zip it back up, and and thank God we got out there and we got in the ring, and the NWA photographer took a great picture of him, holding it, and we're kind of, down below him, and it's just become like just one of those.
It's like an iconic picture, yeah.
And it's just so great to have that because it's there's so much story in that picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So I mean, you go from there, and then just a few months later, January of the following year, they announce AEW is actually going to be a thing here, and I think. Especially fans with podcasts, there's like millions and millions of us, but we always had a kind of a sense when All In happened that, okay, something big's coming. We don't know what it is exactly, but something's coming. And then, of course, January hits, they announce AEW, and then how did it come about that you get asked to be in the Battle Royal for, was it Double or Nothing?
Yeah.
And not only that, but our buddy, excuse me for breaking kayfabe here, but our buddy Dylan, Sunny Days, you freeze him, and you were the one that eliminated Sunny Days. So I'm so excited to see him. Then I didn't know you were going to be in it. Then you're in it. We're excited to see you. And I'm like, no way, he just eliminated Dylan. Wait a second.
Yeah. So,
oh man, but that was awesome. So I guess I obviously know the Rhodes connection.
Yeah.
But did they just approach you and say, hey?
You know what? It was so funny. QT and of course, been coordinating everything, and stuff with everybody. And he says, hey, Cody wanted me to tell you that you're in the Battle Royal.
I didn't even ask. Right away.
And I was like, sure, okay.
So I got to tell you, so I think it was maybe 2017, and it was ROH was coming through town. They were at Center Stage here in Atlanta, and they had a Battle Royal. Yeah. And I was there that night, and there was only maybe 2 or 3 really big pops that night.
Yeah.
Now, Cody and the Bucks were still part of ROH at the time.
Yeah.
When Cody was out there, big pop.
Yeah.
The Bucks came out towards the end. They were in the main event, big pop.
Yeah.
The third biggest pop of that night was Glacier showing up unexpectedly at this Battle Royal in ROH. And I hadn't seen you in years.
Yeah. I had not been inside of
it was crazy.
It's where, it's so many great wrestling moments have happened at Center Stage because of WCW being there and stuff. But same thing, I credit QT. I mean, QT, has been longtime friends with the guys that were running the show, behind the scenes with ROH, and of course Cody was there, and so. So that was the funnest part of it was, that it was, whoever wins would get a match with Cody. And so the funnest, to me, the favorite memory of the whole thing. And like I said, I mean, I was scared to death because, being gone for that period of time and coming back, you never know. I mean, you don't know if there's going to be silence
well, here's
or
the
you're
thing.
going to get laughed out of the place.
From my perspective as a fan, like I was one of the ones that was popping huge, but I feel like the whole place was like, how did that feel for you when you came out? Like you just said, awesome. Expecting – not knowing
just not knowing at all, and it was scary. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was very scary for me because you just never know, and that was that confirmation to me that what people had been telling me was that the Glacier, Glacier had kind of started to experience a resurgence, and people were really, and the thing is, I never really went away, but still, I wasn't on TV anywhere, right. So, but the part I remember the most that stuck out with me is coming out there, and thankfully getting a great reception and watching, Cody stands up, takes his jacket off, and I'm doing the pointing at him, and so we had a great moment, which is that made it all worth it right there.
That's awesome. So. Well, I know I want to be respectful of your time here, and I know you got a class here tonight with the guys. But real quick, let's bring it full circle here. We started talking about the movie at the beginning. Let's bring it back. So, do we have any idea of a release date?
This is what I can tell you is that we our representative for the film just got back from LA, meeting with a couple of big studios as far as distribution. So we're really hoping we'll get a great distribution deal.
Okay.
I don't know what that means yet as far as we're definitely looking for it to be an international release. Whether it's a theatrical, we can just we'll hope and see what happens.
Yeah.
But hopefully, if everything's on track, I would hope that we'll have something that ready to go by late summer, early fall. And it's definitely sometime this year.
Yeah.
And but the one thing I do want to say, I was meant to say earlier, I got off track, is that what this movie is about is, like I said, it's an action adventure film with a little sci-fi twist. Mm-hmm. And when you think that, people go, oh God, pro wrestlers versus aliens. Like, how bad would that be?
I think it'd be badass. I'm excited about it.
And I can tell you this, that so much heart and soul is going into this movie. The story's a really great story. It's a very family-friendly film. Mm-hmm. It's PG-13 only because of the action, and there is some there's some gunfire and some explosions. Think more like A-Team type action, type stuff. But the thing that we're most proud of that we wanted to put out there was a film for the wrestling community, the wrestling fans, wrestlers, that it was a big thank you letter to them, and something that they can be really proud of, that paints wrestling in a great light, and it paints pro wrestling fans in a great light, and professional wrestlers, because there's never been a movie that's really painted wrestlers as heroes outside the ring, and so especially them working together as a team or a group. So and so just to give everybody an idea of who all we've assembled for this film, other than we've already mentioned Ming, Ernest the Cat, myself, if you throw me in there, my buddy Luther, the living legend Larry Zbyszko has a great role in there. The Hall of Famer Stan Larry Hansen has an amazing role. I can tell you there's a good part in the film where Ming and Stan Hansen are together, and that's never happened.
You showed us a few little sneak clips last time I was here, and I got to tell you, it looks really, really cool.
Yeah, and Nick Logan, who plays one of the great roles, plays the younger wrestler in the film, is an amazing actor. If you just look him up on IMDb, and you're talking about a guy who was like a fish to water. He just took to the role and brought a different level of energy than what we were even expecting, and it just really the other actors that are that are in the film that really elevate all of our performances. But and I will say too, I was just texting him yesterday. One of the guys that we were able to work into the film when we adjusted the script some is David Heath, Gangrel.
Okay.
And man, he knocked it out of the park. I mean, awesome. He's had some of the great action scenes in the film, and we only had him for I think 1 or 2 days, and man, he just tore it. There's a big fight scene in the middle of the movie that takes place at this festival. That's a good old kind of John Wayne style fight, and man, he's all over the place. And big Ron Reese, if anybody remembers back from the days of the Flock.
With, I remember Reese.
Big 7 foot tall.
Remember
Reese.
Goldberg jackhammering Reese.
Yeah, so he's in it. Pinklin Thomas, former world heavyweight boxing champion, makes a great cameo in it. So it's chock full of great faces and surprises. But at the end of the day, it's a great film. It's shot really well. It's our, like I said, our love letter, our gift to the wrestling community to say thank you for being such the most loyal fans in the world. Yeah. And it's something I think is going to. I hope and pray that it's something the wrestling community embraces and is proud of, and that will endure, for years and years, and hopefully endure enough to where maybe we get to make another one. Who knows?
Oh, man, that'd be awesome. Well, man, I can't wait. And obviously we'll keep up with you on social media and everything to kind of keep updated on the progress of when it might be released. But
I want to do another one of these
for sure, and for sure. And man, I can't wait. And if there is a big premiere.
There will be. Trust me. I'll make sure you know.
Let us know, man. I can't wait, man. It's going to be so exciting. Well, Ray Lloyd, a.k.a. Glacier, man, I tell you what, we could go on and on and on. You've got stories for days, and it's enthralling to just sit here and listen to you tell stories, man.
We'll have to do it again soon.
We'll definitely do it again soon, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon.
And I know you got some kids waiting on you for training. So
I appreciate you making the drive all across Atlanta.
Of course, man. Yeah, anything, man. Anything for you, buddy. Well, thanks so much, and take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.